Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by
Harry Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Encore Business Group, and Rydan Investments.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.
Stay informed and stay vigilant. Coming back here with Gavino Borquez of Chargers Wire. Great conversation with him so far. I know we talked about Tesla a little bit, Gavino, but was there anybody else on the Lions side that kind of stuck out to you the same way that some of these players that I'm discussing with you on the Chargers side did to me?
Yeah, so you mentioned him earlier. You mentioned Rocky Sin, and I feel like he really stood out because I feel like for the Lions, you know, what are they going to do? Are they going to go 5 or 6 cornerbacks? But, you know, he definitely stood out. And, you know, last year the Lions had, like, injuries all over the defense. So, you know, like Rocky Sin, he's good depth. He made a good open field tackle. I think he stopped 2 touchdowns, and he stood out. And then the pass rusher, is it Ahmed? I don't want to butcher the name. Is it Hassanin?
Yeah.
Or Hassanin? Yeah, the 6th-round pick out of Boise State. He looked good as well. Pass rush reps, and, again, really good run defense. He had, like, 4 tackles, but he was the one that stood out to me at the East-West Shrine Bowl when I was there a few months ago. So those 2 really stood out to me. Dominic Lovett, I think he had a drop pass, but he kind of bounced back from that pretty early on, but I think so he caught 5 for 31, and then he obviously had some return duties too. Lovett was someone who I did like at Georgia, but the drop passes did come up on film here and there, so you saw that early on, but he bounced back. And then you mentioned Tesla, who I know everyone had their eyes on the most, and he definitely stood up to the expectations.
Yeah, I feel like he exceeded we were talking about him with one of the guys from Pride of Detroit in the first segment, and he obviously, it is like you said with one of the players we were talking about earlier with the Chargers, it's too soon to overreact either way, but you're just gathering information as you go, and seeing them in a live game, how they respond is another piece of information. And the 2 guys that you mentioned, the defensive end and Tesla, both of those guys seemed to look very good and feel comfortable in that game environment, because with Hassanin, they thought that was going to be somebody that was going to be a little bit more raw, and that's why he slipped. And yes, he's going against some of the depth guys, but he still looked pretty good in his uniform, pretty smooth, and so did Tesla. He was a guy that people thought was going to have a little bit more of a learning curve, but man, every unit, he played on basically every unit except for defense, and he seemed very smooth out there, and everything worked well, especially because I think you need to factor in the fact that Nico Reed played so well, because he was, I think, canceling out Tesla the best he could and excelling at his position. So that became like the premier matchup to me in that game.
Yeah, with Nico Reed, because, I mean, how was he going to do it against someone that size? That was my biggest question coming into the game, if he was going to get reps in there, and to see him be so physical against someone with that size, like that's very promising. And like with cornerback, and, you know, I mentioned Rocky Sin, like the cornerback depth, it's always up for grabs, especially like the back end of that positional room. So this is the time to really show the coaching staff, like, okay, I want to make this roster. And that's exactly what Nico Reed did. And like, I wouldn't be surprised, or I would be surprised if he's not on the 53-man roster at this point. Like, yeah, there's still 3 games to be played, but he showed up since day one. And that's why, like, I love preseason so much and camp, because you're seeing these guys, and like, yeah, like to just a normal viewer, it's kind of boring. You know, you're not seeing the starters, but for us, like, this is like some exciting stuff, because you have the diamond in the rough players, and like just guys that are just constantly battling. So like Nico Reed was a guy who just really stood out to me.
And Lions fans are not strangers to that concept, because even last year there were guys that weren't even on the practice squad for the Lions. They were having to poach other guys from other practice squads because the depth situation got so bad. But a lot of those camp battles for the 53-man roster, those guys factored in to a large degree, because you talk about the cornerback depth here. Kindle Vildor was always kind of that Mendoza line for the Lions. Once if he was the fifth cornerback, then you were pretty confident. If he was the starting cornerback opposite somebody else, then you were a little bit more nervous. But you do need those depth guys, and Reed and Yasin both look like guys that could factor in, that wouldn't necessarily shrivel under the pressure of the big lights. But I am curious, because obviously we're talking to you early in the season, so I just preached patience and talked about how you can't be too extrapolate things out too much as you go. But I'm curious what you think of the Chargers this year, because this to me, I'm not saying this really because of the game. It was a good game. They played a good game, the guys that were in there. But I just think this is a team that could be on the rise this season. But I'm curious what you think after seeing camp and seeing the acquisitions that they've had.
I think they can be on the rise because, I mean, this is a team where they exceeded expectations in Jim Harbaugh's first year as the head coach. Making the playoffs and everything like that. So now it's like, how far can they go in the playoffs? I think that's obviously the goal. But, I feel optimistic with this team. But like I mentioned in the last segment, there are still question marks. And Jim Harbaugh actually spoke today, and he mentioned the offensive line where, Zion Johnson and Bradley Bozeman are competing for the left guard or center position, but I think loser is going to be left guard. And he said today that the best five are Rashawn Slater at left tackle, Zion Johnson at left guard, Bradley Bozeman at center, Mekhi Becton at right guard, and then Joe All at right tackle. But just hearing the Zion Johnson left guard, Bradley Bozeman, they're basically running it back from last year. And if you watch the playoff game against the Texans, there was so much pressure from the interior, and the only position that was fixed was right guards. Mekhi Becton took Trey Pipkin's spot at this offseason. So yeah, having someone like Mekhi Becton and Joe Alt next to each other, like, that's going to be great. But that's a concern, just seeing that they're running it back with those two guys. Like, there's someone like Will Hernandez who's available who could plug in at left guard, and just having Slater and Hernandez next to each other, like, that would really improve the offensive line. So, the roster's talented. You have the coaching staff, but there are still some concerns. And, I think they can make the playoffs, but how far they'll go, it all just depends on if they kind of finally note that these could be potential weaknesses and if they want to address them mid-season, or even before then. But it seems like that's what the offensive line is going to be, and that could be the deciding factor of, where they end up finishing the season.
They have a lot of weapons. We talked about that both appearances on the show here, but yeah, they have a lot of weapons. They've got a strong defense, so it'll be a team to watch. And I know a lot of people here will be watching them because of all the Michigan connections there. But for those people that want to keep an eye on the Chargers, especially here in town and everywhere, give the people where they can follow you and Chargers Wire and all the good stuff that you're doing there.
Yeah, so you can find me on X. It's my name, Gavino Borquez. No underscore, no dash, just Gavino Borquez as is. And you can follow at the Chargers Wire on X, or just chargerswire.usatoday.com, and where I'll be pretty locked in with coverage. I've been pretty busy on that front doing roster projections right now, just getting ready for the upcoming preseason game against the Saints, all that fun stuff. And then, once the season gets rolling, even though most of you guys are Lions fans, this could be a potential Super Bowl. Maybe we saw a little preview of Chargers and Lions. Who knows? But yeah, it's definitely going to be a lot of fun. And, when Jim Harbaugh is the head coach, and anything can happen. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
I like that idea, Gavino, because obviously we want to highlight these other teams, but one of the fun parts of this segment is if it circles back around in the playoffs. Now, with an AFC team, it's only going to be potentially in the Super Bowl, but I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. I know that's seeming like getting ahead of ourselves with these teams, but I think if things start clicking, I could see that, and it would be fun, and then we'd have you back on and preview the Super Bowl. So we'll pencil that in the calendar here.
Look at that.
Well, thanks, Gavino. We appreciate it, and we'll look forward to following your coverage and following the Chargers season here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Take care. Thanks, Gavino. All right, thanks to Gavino Borquez. We're going to switch around to the preview side of the Counter Intel segment because the Lions season rolls on, even for the people that were disappointed in the first game. We've got the Falcons coming up for the next game, and Savion Mixon of the Falcoholic, which I like that name of that writing outfit there, is going to come on and preview the Falcons because that's another team. I might parrot some of the stuff that I said about the Chargers because that's another young team that I could see being pretty promising this year, and that's not just because I'm a Michael Penix fan dating back to college. But stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.